This podcast is brought to you by the Northern Lights Council of the Boy Scouts of America. Cub Scouts is the nation's foremost youth program for character development and values-based leadership training. In the future, Scouting will continue to offer young people responsible fun and adventure, instill in young people lifetime values, and develop in them ethical character, train young people in citizenship, service, and leadership, and serve America's communities and families with its quality, values-based program. Learn more at nlcbsa.org.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chad Koel. Welcome to this edition of the Northland Outdoors podcast. And boy, have we got a good one today. If you love fishing, particularly walleye fishing, do not go anywhere. And in fact, get a notebook and pen handy because Brian Bro Brosdahl, a veteran professional tournament angler, professional fishing guide, one of the best in the business, in our part of the world anyway, is along for a great conversation about everything, not only walleye fishing, but fishing in general, year-round, some great tips, some great strategies, going to be an unbelievable conversation. But before we get to that, a quick reminder here, please, for everything Northland Outdoors, all of the print articles, the great photos, and of course, everything Northland Outdoors, the podcasts and the videos, make sure you go to inform.com and subscribe. Super low monthly rate gets you access to everything Forum Communications Company has to offer, all of their nearly 40 newspaper websites, information from the rink, and of course NDSU coverage and all of that kind of stuff. It's great. Inform.com. Get there and subscribe. And also, don't forget to check your local listings for the Northland Outdoors TV show. We had a great regular seasons this year, and we have got an even better season planned for next year, but the show is still running on WDAY Extra and across the network, KSFL down in Sioux Falls, so make sure you tune in and watch all of those. Now, without further ado, let's talk fishing with my good friend, Brian Bro Brosdahl.
He's one of the most recognizable anglers in the North Country in our Northland Outdoors. In fact, he's so popular, he only has a three-letter name, and that's all you have to say, bro. Brian Bro Brosdahl joins us on the Northland Outdoors podcast. Bro, how are you?
Good. I can't complain. Caught a lot of fish here in the past week and back to guiding right now, but I had a little tournament time, which is a vacation with a little bit of stress.
Yeah, more than a little bit of stress, but it went pretty well. Tell me about that one. That Rainy Lake tournament is a big one, and a lot of fish this year.
It was really tough, and you're talking about Minnesota Canadian waters, which should be biting on your fingertip when you wiggle it in the water. Not right. So it was really a tough deal for everybody because we're kind of in a transition before the smallmouth bass jump out deep, and they're not sure if they want to be shallow because the weeds are kind of sour and slimy. And so I had a little work to do, and still it's fun. I guide for walleyes just about every day, and just have to do something different. The smallmouth thing helps me figure out stuff on the walleye guide side. So I always enjoy it, and I've been doing this tournament for 18 years. It's been around for 20, and it's kind of turning into this elite tournament, getting really tough. In the past, it was locals versus, Minnesota people versus Canadians. And there's some guys from Louisiana and all over the country. 60 teams, and the waiting list is giant. Yeah. So you have to finish if you finish at the bottom, you're not going to get in for probably 20 years. So you just have to keep going.
Yeah, that's crazy. 15th, you said this
15th. I'm happy because last year we were 51st. Thought we had a decent bag, and we were 51st. So we went for like the biggest bag we've ever had, and we got 15th. So with forward viewing, it changes that game. And but the good thing is, it was slightly ineffective this year for most of the tournaments. So the Game Boys weren't on their game, and you had to fish. And that, guys like Gussie could just come. He showed up and was slipped a little bit on first day, but he always comes back. And I seen that guy racing around, and you just got to be fast. But it's kind of cool. You have to step up your tempo for walleye fishing.
Well, you've been doing it a long, long time, folks. For those who don't know, Bro is a veteran professional tournament angler, both walleye and bass and multi-species. He's a veteran professional fishing guides mostly around let's say the Bemidji Cass Lake kind of area. Really good over there. We've filmed you. I'm sure you saw it. We did a Northland Outdoors episode over with Bro. It was a great day last year. Tell me about this season, Brian. What's the bite been like for you guys and for that part of the state of Minnesota where you're at?
Lots of fish out there, and with technology, you can see what's there now. So it's not like we're saying, oh, there's a lot of fish, and we're not sure they're there. And really tough bite. Nothing slows down a walleye bite more than perch hatch. We've had 3 years of ginormous perch hatchings. And so we got perch from basically 6 to 8 inches, just a pile of them. We got a whole bunch of perch that are 3.5 inches. And then we got these little 2-inch perch, and the lakes are just full of them. And you could have a mayfly hatch, which is just a couple weeks. Right. You could have a midge fly hatch. You could have shiners in the lake. It doesn't stop it like perch. And this same natural thing happened in Minnesota, Wisconsin, I'm sure in the UP, because there's all kinds of fish on Gogebic now, and North Dakota. The perch just exploded because we had the right weather. Everything was right. We had a late spring, and it happened several years in a row. And it's good because the walleyes, they're heavy, they're plump, they're not thin. They don't have to work for their food. All they have to do is just breathe in, and they get perch in their mouth. So it's a little tougher, but you have to finesse more this year, and you can't catch them if you don't go. So I'm out there plying the waters every day for fish, and we have to use finesse tactics. There's some days we're using a 16th ounce, and we're fan casting with 16th ounce jigs. And the walleyes, if it gets too low, they won't eat it. They want to come up and grab it. And then that bite was on for about 2 weeks, and then bobbers, of course, but then they're swimming up to the bobber and swimming away, and sometimes they eat it. And it depends. Barometric pressure changes, the sun and the moon tables, all this stuff. But if you watch these percentages, they boiled down all this information into little apps, and you can see little peaks and valleys and stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff's on. I mean, when it says it's like 96%, you're swerving for deer and turkeys on your way to guiding, and it's going to be a good day. But besides all that, when the fish have food everywhere, they act different. Plus, we've had really hot water, and they tend to use that to digest food, and they've been eating a lot. So you're seeing a lot of fish that are resting. They're not eating. And so we're chasing fish. But if they don't bite, you go to the next school, and then you'll find a school where they all bite. And that's what we've been doing. So we're getting them, but it isn't, oh my gosh, we're catching too many. We don't want to scorch everything here. You go back a few years, you could probably have limited out in 20 minutes, even go back 4 or 5 years. There's so many fish, and they're still there. Ice fishing, I could tell, and I'm out there all the time, the schools were less and less, and they weren't in as many places. There's less fish. And last year we had a slower ice season, but still, for those few short weeks here and there where there's houses everywhere on everything, because remember, we have a map. So right. those fish that are 7 years old, they go up the hole and they're gone. So we will have fish, but we'll see after this winter what happens, because we've got some condos going to be rolling out on the ice if the ice is good, which is good. I'm glad everybody's getting out, but it's not an infinite number. So right now, all the fisheries are healthy, and nature has a way of stopping the bite. But I love it because I'm guiding there every day. I have enough tricks to get people on fish.
You mentioned the perch explosion, and that's one of those double-edged swords as anglers. That's great because we want that. We need that forage base. It's super important, but like you said, it makes it a little bit tougher. How do you get your stuff to stand out to these walleyes when they have so much to eat? How do we show them something that they want to eat? What do we do? What are some of the tweaks you do?
Well, then little things like Northland has a lot of different jigs and little tungsten jigs. So instead of using, last year I'd probably use a big MVP jig with a big shiner minnow. This year I'm using a little tiny tungsten jig, short shank, with a fathead. And the fatheads are working because it's small. They're not hungry. Small tungsten stand-ups that Northland's coming out with on a bobber. This is a little tiny jig. You put a leech on there, and I'm not using jumbo leeches. There's times when they're biting, you can get some big fish to play with those. We're not fishing a tournament. We're trying to get them in northern Minnesota limit of walleyes and a few big throwbacks. But that's been working. But finesse, little tiny things like this. And then, of course, lately, this has been my bread and butter here. The deep V spinner, that little spinner. And I'm using fatheads that, not these great big ones that you hope you can find, but I'm using kind of medium fatheads and double hooking them on here. And there's a little barb you can see there. But throwing it out and hopping it back, the fish are kind of in transition. They went from basically all the bug hatches to the crayfish molting. They lose their shell and then they eat them. They're like soft food then. And then now they started, resting, and now they're eating crayfish and they're eating minnows, the perch. So when they start chasing, I want something that really stands out. And this has been one of the hottest ones. You're seeing it right here today on Winnie, Cass, Bemidji, and all the area lakes, is that walleye color. It stands out nice, and that willow leaf blade, you can reel a little bit, but I'm hopping it across the bottom, and that blade still flickers. Without a blade, you're getting bit, but this is getting twice the bites. So that's been really hot. That's an 1/8 ounce, and so I'm going kind of small in that, but I'll always have a few rods rigged up with eye candy plastics, just to see if there's a hot fish down there, and you'll rip that through there, and you can get one right away or a couple, and then you better go back to your tactics. But so we have bobbers in the boat. We have a few drop shots, which wasn't as hot as last year. The year before, we killed everything with drop shots. You throw it in front of the fish on a windy day and just hold that leech on the hook up high with a little finger line, and your sinker's on the bottom, so you tie it to this level of the walleyes. We'd throw that where when it's really wavy, going up and down like this, bobbers don't work as good. They just don't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I like the idea of having one of a faster moving bait. I think a lot of people always kind of settle on one thing or another, and they stick with that. But to give them, because you're right, sometimes when a fish is overfed, they'll still have a reaction straight. Something comes by them. It's not even their thought, I don't think. It's just a reaction that they're going to eat it. So, showing them a little different things once in a while, I think is a good idea for sure. What about locations? Everybody talks about the dog days, and there's no question that right now, August always gets a little tougher on a lot of lakes, especially these smaller lakes that have a lot of weed growth and so on. How do you find fish this time of year when they seem to be so spread out?
Well, what happens, basically, we go from the shore to offshore to structure. From spring is on shore, then offshore is slightly June-ish, and then structure or steep breaks that face the basin during the bug hatch. And then after the bug hatch, the crayfish molting sucks all the fish up on top. So flats with cara or gravel, rocks are super good in crayfish areas. And crayfish don't need giant boulders. They just need little places to tuck and hide and do their thing. So right now, location was big flats, and now it's turning into sharp edges off of the flats. So big bars that face of the basin, and fish are slowly sucking into the weeds again. So on giant water, I mean, you could look for thousands of acres, but I'm finding the fish, if you have weeds and you have an expansive flat where that weed edge is, and if there's a few rocks, you've got kind of a gold mine there for walleyes, but it's taking quite a few spots. If we need 18 walleyes, we're not going to get them all in one spot.
Right.
We'll probably have to work across several spots. And last year at this time, in the same spots, all I needed was plastics, and I was using the jig crawler, eye candy jig crawler from, the middle of summer. It was a minnow shape, and then jig crawler or the small grub. But towards the fall, all I used is a fluke, and that's what a fluke style bait is right there, and that's been working now. But you have to keep switching, so I'll have that rigged up on a long shank jig. But I'll mess around with colors. And watermelon's always been a great color in Leech and some of the other lakes. It's been a hot color this summer on my area lakes. Watermelon gold. And then, of course, black was pretty hard to beat. This little micro black jig. This is only a 16th ounce. I'll have those tethered up on a bobber. But then some days, and this is why we wash colors, I'll have moonlight. And you'll watch the walleyes come up, and they'll look at it, and they'll leave. They'll come up to the right one, they eat it, and then the other one will follow them. So if you lose your bait, if one plucks your leech, you'll watch that walleye swim away, and the whole school will follow him, trying to get it out of his mouth or something. But try not to lose a leech, because when I'm using leeches, I kind of thread them on a little bit. Not just if you just hook them through the sucker and throw it out there, you might as well just dump your leeches over the side, because you're going to lose them. So I kind of thread them on, and it does kill them. Water's so hot, your leeches die in about, 10 minutes. So you got to keep it moving. But a dead leech works just fine. But windy days, jig or drop shot. And if you get a calm day, they're really spooky. But you can finesse stuff. It's like crappie fishing for walleyes. And it's been really good. Now, all this is going to change. I've been saying this now for a year now, since last year when fall got tough with all the perch. These perch aren't going to stay like this and like this and like this. All of these perch are going to be like this, and we're going to have a lot of jumbo perch, but they're going to eat what the walleye eats. So you're going to see walleye probably not as plump, but they're going to bite like crazy. Right. And I'm predicting, because every time this has happened in my 30 years of guiding, where you get huge numbers of perch to shut down a fishery, Mille Lacs, or we even see it up at Rainy Lake and Lake of the Woods. There's perch everywhere. They grow and they eat what the predators eat, and we're going to see a pretty good bite next year. Last winter, the walleyes on these same bodies of water were coming up to people's lines and swimming by them. And some people would see 100 walleyes a day, and which is for sure, in fishing type of talk, was for sure 30 or 40 maybe. Right. People's 100 is really 30 or 40, but they're seeing lots of walleyes, and they're dropping a shiner, they're dropping this spoon, this, that, not getting them. So last winter was kind of tough. We'd get, 1 to 4 a piece in a group. I'd be guiding at sunset, and that's it. But in years prior, just in that little window, that half hour after we're done perch fishing, we'll go for walleyes. Some nights we had 28, which is like, that's fast half hour fishing. And then you'd lose how many, and you catch northerns, whatever. But last year, it was you could hear crickets chirping, on the ice towards dark. The late night people who sleep in their houses, we're getting them, and that's but that's not guiding. You're not gonna. I'm not gonna go 24 hours a day with somebody.
Come on, bro. Come on. What do you mean? That bro is 24-hour service.
I'm back at home in my bed at that time. That's right. I don't want to hear the ice cracking and moving.
Hey, quickly before I want to talk specifically a little bit about baits, but you mentioned how weeds and this time of year, especially now, walleyes moving kind of back into the weeds. But I think a lot of, like, maybe, I don't know what the word is, I'm looking, traditional or old school walleye guys are a little bit leery about getting into the weeds. I mean, it's always been more of they want to fish structure or deeper water. Tips on fishing weed beds? What would you say? How do you handle it?
Well, right now on lakes that have rusty crayfish, a lot of your cabbage is gone. So the walleyes are holding into this ribbon grass, not cara, which is that skeletal like grapevine stuff.
Right.
But they love cara, and that ribbon grass, they're in it. They're in it, and your lure goes through it nicely. It still catches. That's the stuff floating all over by the axes and ends up in your trailer. But that's going to die off here soon. But as long as it's there, there's going to be walleyes in it, scattered, and they're moving up on a lot of these lakes on some of the shoreline breaks. These big flats have come off the shore. They're going to be on those edges, and wind helps. Weather's a big deal, but they're going to be on the edges of those weeds, but they don't sit still. It's different with clear water. Walleyes, we always heard, oh, how deep did you get them? Some people being 50, 70, 80 feet, getting walleyes, late summer towards fall. A lot of these lakes that had deep fish, they don't go deep anymore. I don't know if they exterminated them or caught them all, but everything's shallow now, and they'll go down a little bit, but the bigger walleyes are floating around, suspended. I see them all the time. We really don't even. We're trying hard to get a limit of fish, but we do see them, and all over the place, and it's just a little different. So, but it is old school this summer compared to normal. But the walleyes are going to start going through a transition. They're schooling up. You're going to see more and more of them together, and these fall migration spots. Places where tullabies and whitefish come in the fall, all the way into cold water down into the 40s. The 50s and 60s right at turnover is one of the best times. But there's still some old school lakes that have deep fish. But most of the fish I'm fishing for, we hardly ever go past 20 feet. During the bug hatches, they will go down. There was a time period there 3 weeks ago, they were in 20 to 30 feet of water eating the bugs. But right now they're going to be structures. Last year at this time, they're on shoreline rock pile spines and structures, and now they're going to be edge of the weeds. If the weeds are all rotten and slimy, not so good. But there's different parts of the lake will have clean weeds, and you'll see them. You can look in the water, and if there's cabbage in the lake, you'll see it's really clean stuff. There's going to be fish there for sure. If there's current, there's going to be fish there, and current changes on a lake. It's not like a river current. It's a seiche. So when the wind blows the water one way, it comes back. The weeds will be standing. The next time you look down, they're bent over. When they're bent over, you can fish through them. I look for these opportunities. I'll be going along. The weeds are bent over. So here you go. Here's a deep V spinnerhead. Throw it out there and just reel it real slow and jig it like a jig in a minnow, and we'll do really well. You got to pay attention, and the lake will give you clues. If the weeds are bent over, there's current going through, so you want to fish through them, and it's easier. Instead of on the edge, you're going to be right in them.
Yeah, we say listen to what the fish tell us, but also listen to what the lake is telling you. That's a great tip. Let's talk baits real quick. And the age-old argument with, not age-old, it's the last 15-year argument with walleye fishermen anyway, live versus artificial. And you've already been talking about some of the eye candy that you use a lot. Give me your thoughts for those people out there that are still so stubborn to say that you can't catch a walleye unless you got live bait.
Well, I got to say, this new TPE stuff's so soft. It's real fluffy in the water, and it absorbs scent. So we are scenting them up. I'm scenting them up. And I think that it's better than live bait at times. Last year, I always brought minnows. I have diehard minnow users. I give them a minnow, and I have one volunteer, their wife or their buddy or their kid, with plastics. When they caught 4 fish, they'd start thinking. And I'm like, okay, you have this much time left. All right, switch them into plastics. And they start catching fish. A minnow in hot water, when it starts dying, looks like a chunk of something going through. Plastics really have a good motion to them. Real good soft plastics really move in the water. They don't stop moving. And the nice thing, one of the reasons I like using stand-up heads with these, you can see I cut it off for the show here, but the plastic floats. So when you stop and you're in Cara, that thing's sitting up there. Arguably pretty hard to beat a leech from now you can barely get them now until you can't get them. Those people who are hoarding them are going to hammer fish all the way till fall. But plastics, with perch out of the way, we won't have to use anything else. And last fall and last summer, all I used was plastics. And then went to the paddle tail during the bug hatches, and then pre-bug hatch was the jig crawler. And then in the fall, then I used the minnow, which is that long, fluky looking thing. But I always bring bait. I always like to say hi to the people who have bait. You stop in and it's, a guide keeping good friends with a bait shop is very important because you want to stay there even when you don't need them. You better at least hang around. But plastics never did that. They weren't that soft. And I tried stuff in the past. When a fish would hit the tail, it'd be gone, and you go through a bag of them. This you might get a northern hit that, but that northern's just gonna snap it like that. He's not gonna. But if he gets a tooth in there, you can cut it. But this stuff is like they use this stuff on automobiles. I mean, it's fantastic, and it floats. So in the water, it's floating if you let it sit on the bottom. So put scent all over it. Make sure you pick the right scent. If you pick the wrong scent, you'll know. Like
not gasoline.
Not gasoline. So last year, I used squid because squid's been around forever, and I put a little squid on there, and it was going good. And then I said krill. I'm gonna try krill because that's like a shrimp from saltwater.
Yep.
It's gonna be a little bit pungent, perfect for crayfish time. I put it all over. Tried it in the spring, and fish were like coming up to it, and they're sniffing and like ugh, and they take off. And then I broke some out because I just saturated a bunch of plastics I had about the end of July. Krill was the best all the way to fall. I'm not sponsored by scent. I just use it. And so do like one of them. This will absorb it like a sponge. Use one at a time. And I could go out there any day of the week on any body of water and catch a limit on plastics. But not all the time can I take people with different degrees of fishing ability out to get them on plastic. But it is really rewarding when someone who's never caught a fish on plastic catches a bunch of them on plastic. And you just got to know, you got to have them ready to go. You want to have a good jig rod, 7-footer. And then on windy days, go shorter, 6-foot rod so you don't get that. It negates the wind's effect on your rod. And light line. I've lightened my line this year because the fish are just fussy. They're just, and there's tons of them. They're just fussy. So I've gone from 10, 8 to 6 pound Sunline fluorocarbon leader. You can barely see it. I can barely tie it. Right. And you're just gentle with the fish. I think a person could go even lighter. If you had to catch really big fish that are wary, 4-pound test would catch them on the ice with 4-pound test, and you got a big net. Just take your time. I think finesse is important this year, and it's something to be said. But plastics, those of you using live bait, all you got to do is this: just get some plastics. Anything that it looks perchy or white is always good, and then a shiner minnow. 3 colors. And I like eye candy. It's proven itself, and I've used everything. I've used some different Japanese ones. I've used some of the other giant companies ones. I've tried them all, but I want these because they're super soft. They float and they absorb scent, and I could use them over and over. I had one jig worm last year that lasted for 2 weeks on the hook. Didn't dry up. Still smelled. I refreshed it every now and then. I'd soak it, put a few drops on the side of my gunnel, and I'd squish it in there. That's all you need. Yeah. Start pitching again. And if you have someone in a boat that pulls 4 or 5 fish over 20 inches up to 24 on that thing, everybody in a boat's going to want one. But if you get one of those days where the pressure is low, when I mean low, the whole lake has fish everywhere, and you can't find one because they're dropping to the bottom, and even your technology can't see them too well, then you probably want to use live bait and just drag it. We've had to drag bait this year. We've had to bobber fish. We've had to drop shot. And we do drop shots if it's real wavy. Your bobber's going up and down like this,
Right.
That's not the time. But then spinner, underspin jigs, the Smeltnator is really cool. That's the one that Gussie, the Bass Pro, has.
Yep.
For walleyes, it's phenomenal. And it's like high end. I might go out there, might have 10 in my whole boat. So I don't have a lot of those. I have mostly the deep fees because they're affordable and you get a bunch of them. But that Smeltinator is the best. It's got a little Gamakatsu hook. This hook's fine. This works. But you're going to snag them up if you do what I do. I'm dragging them right through the rocks, right through the mussels. And the day of dragging stuff in these clear lakes is over. You could drag a big red tail. That's different. Or what we do is we tie a short rig and we cast it out and then reel it back slow. And if you get a bite, flip your bail open and feed them. Split shots you could drag. But this is the first year for the last 5 years that drifting has been really good. And I think the fish under real low power, just hitting your trolling motor here and there, the fish are actually coming around and following the boat. On these lakes where people are coming in, they're getting skunked, they're not catching fish. We're catching a lot of drifting on the bars, and water is darker, and that makes a big difference. Last year, the lakes I was fishing was 22 and 27 feet of clarity. This year, it's like 8, maybe 10. And with all the algae, because we didn't have a winter last year, the algae didn't die off or didn't go dormant. And so we have a lot of algae, and when the wind blows, it pulverizes it and makes the water darker. And some lakes are really dark. I wouldn't want to swim and swallow water by accident on them.
Let's talk electronics quickly, and that's one of the hot topics here the last few years, and you mentioned it already. Our good friend forward-facing sonar. Let's talk your experience with it. I mean, it's all relatively new to all of us, and so let me ask how you have been using it, what your thoughts are on the technology, and everything.
Well, and with forward viewing, let's say the old days, there's some days you don't know they're there. You say, well, we had side imaging, that really helped. But now, in the past, I'd look at my watch sometimes thinking it's 2:00 and it's 10, when you're really grinding for fish. Now the day flies because you're seeing fish all the time, and you can't make them bite. You cannot make these fish bite. It helps you, though. It helps you fish and not just fish spots. I can see it's extremely volatile for crappies. Crappies are sitting ducks, and right now as we speak, there's hundreds and hundreds of boats across panfish lakes all across Minnesota and Dakotas, and they're all getting them, and they're usurping the oldest fish of the lake because they can see them. Look at this, look at that pot of fish. You can cast at them. Muskies are different. Like walleyes, some days people have forward-facing sonar. They're fishing a school of suckers and they don't even know it. And they get a walleye that passes through once in a while. You'll have a whole group of boats sitting on suckers. I'll drop a camera. I'll look down the water. I'll snag one. I make sure I'm not wasting my time. And I'll leave. And I'll come back and they're still sitting on that school of suckers. And these lakes are full of them because we don't get a summer kill. But forward-facing sonar, if you're good at it, it's unbelievable, and we're seeing record bags and tournaments. But I also know there's people out there that don't care about anything, and they're just going to take whatever. But they would have done it before, and they're doing it more efficiently now. But I think we need crappie lakes, really good crappie lakes that are prolific. Let's keep it off some of those lakes. Save a few for people or for kids. I mean, we can have any. I mean, crappies and muskies are sore thumbs. Walleyes, they could not bite sometimes. They could just put up the middle fin at you. But crappies, panfish are extremely vulnerable, and muskies are the worst. And some of your muskie guides have 3 to 6 units on, so they're seeing every direction, and they're driving and they see the fish. And a muskie sits off the bottom on a flat on a lot of these lakes, and you could just see them, and they're big.
Yep.
And they'll go throw 2 casts. They don't bite. 2 to 4 casts, 6 casts. They'll go to the next one, and they'll just go around where all these muskies are. And if they've been on the lake every day, so they know where they're at, that's not fair chase. We can't use drones for deer.
Right.
Well, can we use a drone to chase down an elk? And pretty soon we could just send our drone, and our drone could tell us how it went, right? But it doesn't have to be gone, but let's have a few lakes with panfish that are unspoiled.
Right.
There's something nice about, you go to the boundary waters and they strip some of that down, but in some areas you don't see it. But on some of these lakes that are fantastic, that are full of 7 to 20-year-old walleyes, do we have to? I mean, can we make it a little bit more of a surprise, more fun, more fishing? If the lakes don't have, we don't need it on just a few random lakes. Let's have a lake that's pretty good for walleyes, just one of them. Let it fish normal, and the population will probably be good, and you'll catch them without it.
Yeah. And one of the neat things, and I'm sure you mentioned already, how it's just so interesting to watch these fish on the forward. And that's what I've found, is it's taught me so much about how fish react to our baits, things that we always had in our mind, right? That we thought were happening, like a walleye will never go down to eat a bait, or and all of that stuff gets thrown out the window. Have you noticed that? Rather than just being able to catch them, is just learning more about them.
Oh yeah, I've learned more about how much they never stop swimming, and how they'll turn down your bait over and over. It's an unbelievable advantage, because you could see them all the time. We're not fishing; we're fishing fish, and even with that, there's people coming to the access, and they talk to the weed inspectors, and they're yelling that they can't catch any fish. What's wrong with this? And so not everybody with forward-facing sonar is going to catch fish. It's also how many different techniques can you do? And I don't know, in certain venues, it's real tricky, but I've learned a lot with it. I don't see it going away, because it's a valuable tool. Kids are interested. You give a kid a boat with forward-facing sonar and a trolling motor, you've really got something. But give a kid that and tell them that it's okay to let them fall back in the lake. You don't have to,
Right.
It's with great power, we have great responsibility, and with technology like this, we have an even more more responsibility to make sure that we keep our lakes with some fish in them.
Yep.
I mean, how far can it go? Right now, I've had people a little bit nervous about crappie chasers all over the state. And they always go to me and ask, what do you do? And I said, well, there's nothing you can do.
No, as long as it's legal, unfortunately, yep.
Yeah, it's a limit change, and it is an unbelievable advantage. It truly is, and I think that it helps get kids into it, and the kids are the best at it. They're the best because they know how to use that
electronics. Well, it's a little sad to say, but we've kind of turned it into a video game, because that's what it feels like to me when I'm out there. It's like a video. And who loves the video games more than the kids, But I think you really hit it on the head, bro, in that regardless, the reason we love fishing so much is the chase, the hook set, the fight, the thrill of landing them, put them back in the lake. That's what we have to change. It's okay if we catch more, as long as we don't need to keep them all, we need 2 fish for a dinner, and that's it, and that's what really needs to get pounded home, I think.
And it varies from place to place. Some people want the big numbers, they're out to click it, the spring river crowds, and the the competitive crowds that go to Canada. Well, we got 100 something fish, all the same size with that day up there, each one of us. And, that's one crowd. The other crowd's like, the trip ain't worth it if I don't have dead fish. And I'm in the middle, because I got clients that don't keep any. Or I have some that say, okay, we're going to eat 2 tonight. That's all we want. We just want to have fun, catch fish, look around the water. And it's an excuse to be in a really cool spot. And I said that when I was 9 years old. It was a I said, fishing is my excuse to be in extraordinary places. And I seen a lot as a young kid, wading in the Mississippi through islands and seining my own bait, riding a bike and fishing and catching walleyes and bass and northerns, catfish right next to my feet. You know, when you stand there, you become structure. And then now later in life, it's hammered down and then dropping transducers in the water. It's really fun. But there's both sides. You know, there's a tournament coming up on cast. They're going to have forward and non-forward, and they each get a prize. So it'll be interesting. You know, it's not all one way or the other. We got to have diversity, and just a few lakes. Like, remember Annie Battle, no electronics, over there in by Battle Lake, and it's got fantastic pan fishing. Have a couple of lakes where a person could. I don't have technology, or they don't want to have technology. They want the element of surprise. Just a few lakes. And I think everybody would go for that. Maybe, you know, a half a dozen. We got thousands of lakes. Let's do a couple dozen lakes where it's old school, old fun, and stock the heck out of it. So,
well, we already have plenty of lakes where gas power is not, you know, is restricted, right? You can't use your outboard on some, you know, electric only in places like that. I mean, it'd be no different than that. Well, bro, before we turn you loose, let's get a quick. You already touched on it some, but let me ask you, based on what you've seen and so far, what you expect this fall and then the winter, because I know ice is a big deal for bro. Spend a lot of time out there. So what kind of predictions are you going to make for us as far as fishing this fall and winter?
Well, I'm guessing, you know, if you look at the Farmer's Almanac, and I don't know what campfire that was made over, but sometimes they're pretty right. And they have a lot of different formulas, but a lot of people are saying maybe it'll snow this winter. If we get snow, fishing will be better. Resorts have plows, so they'll be able to get to your ice castles out there, your Yetis. But I'm seeing that this winter is going to be better than last winter. Last winter, a lot of walleyes came in and left the bait. This winter, they're going to bite, and we're going to have great morning and evening walleye bites. The perch population is way better than it's been in a long time. This is the best perch fishing I've seen in, I want to say, 16 to 17 years. And you go back then, the perch limit was 100, and no matter how many people went out there, you looked on the hole, there's perch everywhere. Yeah. But our walleye populations have rebounded, and you can't have everything. You know, perch get eaten. Big perch get eaten by northerns and walleye. So I think it's a good balance. We're going to see good perch fishing. We're going to have decent ice. It'll be a snowmobile year or tracks on a four-wheeler. If there's slush, don't take a track with a four-wheeler. You're going to get stuck. And you're going to, the wheelhouses will be able to go, and there's going to be places where you better have a sled to go. So I think fishing is going to be really good. And maybe this winter, the snow will make the algae go dormant. And we even know lakes far away like Erie, if they get ice, it freezes and they get snow. The walleye hatch after that is gigantic. And they had two giant year classes that filled the whole lake. And so it's good. It's good to get a hard winter. You know, those winters where the deer suffer and die, those are the winters that help our fishing. And now we're seeing what happens if you get a mild winter. If the lakes become slimy, and then you get algae bubble gas. And when I heard about algae bubble gas on the border lakes there in Minnesota, I had an article out a month before that in Midwest Outdoors about the effects of algae, because I knew we weren't going to kill it. And but I think now this fall, when that water temperature gets in the 30s, it's going to knock that out, and fish are going to move up on the shoreline as that stuff goes dormant and disintegrates. And it's going to be great. I can't wait to get on my sled and go out there and sit outside. I don't care how cold it is, and fish off the sled. I just love it. Yeah. It's fun. And I don't always use forward sonar when I'm on the ice, because you're walleye fishing. They come out of the weeds. But I am looking at something, and it's just a blast. And then there's sometimes I'm just looking down the hole because it's only 4 feet deep. But there's nothing like a walleye coming in really shallow water. And then you see him sucking the bait.
See that gill flare? Yeah.
Explode. I'm looking forward
Brian
to
Brosdahl. Bro's the man, people. And if you have any interest, you want to get over that direction, I'm sure he's really hard ticket to book, but look him up, Bro. Bro, what's the website? You got a website, Bro?
Just go to brosguideservice.com or just follow my stuff on social media and you can see what I'm up to.
Yeah, and he does some great stuff, folks. This is one of these guys that's really into that part of it and keeping all of us. Most of these guys, so secretive and everything. Bro shares it all on the social media.
Everything.
Yeah, I think you did. I don't think there's anything left.
Well,
Brian, thanks so much.
It's always fun with you.
Oh, yeah. We'll touch base again later on this year. I think maybe when we start getting some ice would be a good time to check back in with Bro. And maybe we should just head over there with the cameras again and do another little ice piece this year. We'll try that probably.
Come out, early ice, anytime, whatever works. There's always a bite somewhere.
You bet. Okay. Brian, thank you so much. We will check in with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, Chad.
All right. Thanks again, Bro, for joining us. Boy, I'm glad I was taking notes. That was so much great information about catching fish. And another quick reminder, go to brosguideservice.com if you want a great day on the water and to learn so much, you won't even believe it. And then also explore a little bit of North Central, the beauty of North Central Minnesota. Book a day with Bro and you will not be disappointed. I absolutely promise you that. Now, before we go, another quick reminder, go to inforum.com and subscribe. Make sure you don't miss a minute of Northland Outdoors and all the other great information that Forum Communications Company has to offer there. And also check your local listings and don't miss an episode of Northland Outdoors Television. Until next time, my name is Chad Koel. This is the Northland Outdoors Podcast, and we will see you out there in our Northland Outdoors.